And that's the kind of town Nashville is. It's like, hey, if you're ever in town, here's my card, give me a call. And it's not cutthroat like a New York or a Los Angeles. I mean, Nashville is Music City, but it's also a place where people want to see you succeed. They want to help you any way that they can, and they'll give you shots. And it's kind of up for you if you can see if you can sink or swim. And when you can find out you can swim, it's pretty incredible. And then things just start snowballing.
From NCPR, welcome to Northwards. People, ideas, and conversations from and about Northern New York, Vermont, and beyond. I'm Mitch Teich.
Support for the Northwards podcast comes from the J.C. Steiniger and M.E. McDonald Charitable Fund at Adirondack Foundation, in support of the Adirondack Foundation, building stronger Adirondack communities.
Many of us, when we're young, think about doing anything we can to get out of our parents' shadow and blaze our own trail. In my case, my dad had a PhD in political science, which first led him to teach at the university level and then go into a long career in science policy, doing work that I always had a really tough time explaining when a friend asked what my dad did. So when I went to college, I decided I had to follow a different path. I went through 7 different major combinations, programs like liberal studies with an English concentration, history, English, before graduating with a bachelor's degree in politics. But at least I have an easy time explaining my own job. At any rate, sometimes it takes a good long while before we appreciate how our parents' interests influence the things that we do as adults. But sometimes, as in the case of our guest today, we figure it out pretty early. Kyle Tupper grew up in Canton. His dad was a drummer when he was young. In fact, if you've been to a bar or a festival in the North Country in the past 40 years, you have probably heard the band his dad played with for a decade called Double Axel. Kyle thought that was pretty cool. Cool enough that he pursued music for practically his entire life. At high school in Canton, at the Crane School of Music, as a music teacher at schools in St. Lawrence County, and now as a full-time Nashville musician. Well, he's in Nashville only part-time, but we'll explain that in a few minutes. But the really cool part is that his latest musical release is a cover of a song by Double Axel, one that his dad originally played on. Kyle Tupper joins us on the line from Bloomington, Indiana. Hello there. Nice to see you.
It's a delight to meet you as well, Mitch. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So I was hoping we could start with a story you shared online a few weeks ago that first caught my attention anyway. How or maybe why did you come to record a song that was first written and performed, back in the 1980s by the band Double Axel?
Yeah, so my dad was the third drummer over the tenure of the group Double Axel, and they're still playing today. So after Dad left, they went to a 3-piece, but and Alex, who used to play keyboards full time in the group and multi-instrumentalist, great guy. But Dad played back in, I think it was like 84 to 94, I think was the time that he played there. And right when he joined the band, they were working on the album Lovers Never Win. And so he played drums and sang background vocals on pretty much all the songs, and he had the opportunity to collaborate with Alex and write lyrics and work on the song "I Need You Now," which was one of my favorite songs because as a 8-year-old kid hearing your dad on this vinyl record, which how many of us really know what those things are anymore? Dad, being a musician, had the big speakers and everything. So I was very spoiled growing up listening to great music all the time. And then he would pop out, yeah, and I was in this band. And he put the record on. And he's like, I sang this song. And I was hooked. Right then, I was like, man, that is such a great song. And then he made a cassette tape from the stereo. Made a cassette tape. And I wore that thing out. I'd get to the end of that song and I would just rewind it and go through my little boombox that I had at the time. And I just was like, man, this is such a great song. And so there was like the pivotal moment for me. And I do believe it was around 8 or 9 years old when I heard the song for the first time. And I was like, wow, there's this caliber of musicianship right here in our own backyard, and this great band, and my dad was in it. How cool was that? And so the song has always been in the back of my mind, and it's usually the first thing I show other people when they say, oh, your dad's a musician too. It's like, oh, yeah. And like I have it now in MP3s and WAV files, so I'll just pop it. It's always on my phone. I'll pop it up, and wow, when was this recorded? It's like, yeah, back in '84. Oh, that's him singing? Yeah, wow, that's incredible. It's like, where'd they do that? Oh, they had like a little barn studio on Judson Street Road out in Canton, New York. Never heard of it. It's like, well, you probably wouldn't. But yeah, that's pretty much the story, and it's always been a great song in my mind, and I just always loved the way he sang it. We would listen to music all the time together, and so that was one of the first songs that he showed me of him on a record, and I just thought it was so cool. I was just so proud to know that my dad was in this great band, and they're still a great band, and they're still performing all over the North Country and doing great things. But yeah.
Well, it answers the backstory, but when did the idea to re-record it in 2023 or 2024 come along? And how did you set about, like, what was the let's be heady here and say artistic vision for the new version?
Well, okay, so it kind of ties along with my move to Nashville. My wife and I moved to Franklin, Tennessee back in 2018. I remember it vividly, actually. I was sitting on the back patio with a cup of coffee. I think it might have been around 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. And at that time, I had been working through some online courses on how to record music. And it's always been a passion of mine, something I've always loved doing and wanted to get really good at. And I thought at that moment, I was like, man, wouldn't it be cool to like re-record all of these songs that inspired me to really do the whole musician thing. And it was kind of like my homage to this great group that I revere so much. And I remember calling a couple of them. I think I called Rob Zollner, who did a lot of the production on this, and I remember talking to Dad as well. I was like, do you think this is too cheesy? What do you think? He's like, I think that'd be a great idea. And the other guys were just chuffed about it too, and so supportive of it. They're like my musical uncles, you know. It's just like I look up to them, and I wanted to get their like okay before I did it type of thing. But that was in 2020, so it's like pre-pandemic, like right before the pandemic hit. And I'm working through how to record at home, how to do things. I've done a couple of things before, but how do I take it from being like this amateur recording thing to this professional level, which is where I've always wanted to be. And weirdly enough, the pandemic hit at a perfect time where I could really learn the craft, right? And so I went into this whole deep dive of getting really good studio quality recordings right at home for inexpensive rates, and it just snowballed into that. And then I kind of just put it on the shelf for 3 years, really. And because right around that time, my wife then got accepted into Indiana University to do, she's also a musician, fabulous musician. And she's getting her doctorate in wind band conducting. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But so she got that. Her assistantship came through and a full scholarship to IU. And so that kind of put this whole project on the back burner. And so I've been traveling back and forth between Nashville and Bloomington for the last 3 years now. And finally had a moment to breathe and be like, I have this on my hard drive. Let's finish it and just start putting it out there. It's just like most musicians, we write, and it's just ideas that get put on the shelf and they just sit there. And so I've just kind of, I don't know if it's been some sort of lightning bolt that just hit me and said, Eureka, just get over yourself and start putting this stuff out. And it was incredible to just see the response, not only like for people like you, but from folks all over New York State and other areas in the country that went to SUNY Potsdam, went to Clarkson, went to St. Lawrence University, went to SUNY Canton, and were watching Double Axel in the 70s and the 80s. And, I remember seeing your dad. God, he was so great. And the landing, we went up to the water hole in Lake Placid, and we saw them. It was the greatest band we ever seen. And that's when I met my wife. And so it's like I put this random song out, not thinking anything of it. It's like, it's just a great song. And then just seeing how it really was a part of other people's lives. It's so cool to see how it's just snowballed into that. And I was like, man, that was really cool. And then you emailed me about doing this little interview, and I was like, how cool is that? Just this one song from 1984 has reached other people, and other people too. Great musicians in the North Country be like, I remember getting that record. I think that song was on side 2. I think it was the first song on side 2. I was like, yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I'm sure it is. So, that was that whole process of just learning how to record and wanting to kind of just keep their music alive. It's just like my way of saying this is what inspired me as a musician, and people do it with all kinds of other great music. Like people like Burt Bacharach or the Beatles, and the Rolling Stones. People are still recording their music. Said, well, you know what? There's great music at the local scene, and if it's the one little thing I can do to keep the music of the North Country alive, then I'm going to do it. So that was the whole spark that lit the fire. And so let's see, I've got a couple more on that record that I'm working on, and so who knows, maybe there'll be some more Double Axel originals that will be released into the ether and kept alive for another 50 years.
Well, so I feel bad. I spent a fair amount of time trying to track down the original Double Axel recording of the song. Yeah. But while I found, some listings for the vinyl online, I have not actually been able to hear it. How would you describe how the original version compares to what you recorded? How true to the original did you try to stick?
I'd say it's about maybe 60-40 to the original. And I might be a hair slower. The key's different. Dad sang it in D. I dropped it down to C. Just vocally, it felt a little bit better. The arrangement as a whole is 100% true to the song in terms of verse, chorus, guitar solo. But I changed a couple of chords, to, spiced it up and everything. A lot of my background comes from learning jazz voicings and playing piano that way. And it was just something like, okay, I like these chords, but how, I want to stay true to the song, but I'll add a little bit of me.
But it does have it has a really nice 80s vibe to it, too.
Yeah. So I was kind of going, there's this whole movement of this genre called synthwave / retro wave, where people are really just coming back to those synth sounds of the 80s, the reverbs, the guitar solos. It's really coming back in vogue, and for me, that's great, because I love that stuff.
I need to tell you that the sun is shining. I need to tell you what I need is you. I need you near me, 'cause it's almost morning. I need to tell you you're my dream come true.
I sang it pretty close to the way Dad sang it, and just a couple of different inflections, but it's pretty much note for note the way he sang it. Vibe and feel is a little bit different. It's kind of cool to be like, okay, just naturally I'd play a drum fill that Dad played the exact same drum fill 40 some years ago. And so it's kind of cool to see, but I'm going to do it this way now. Most people are like, I want to sound like Michael Jackson, or I want to sound, like nowadays like Billie Eilish, or like people are emulating their voices. Like, well, I wanted to sound like my dad, and I wanted to sound like Alex, I wanted to sound like Rob, because those were the voices I heard on a weekly basis. So it was weird. I grew up in a time where that was the music I was listening to compared to what was hip on the radio, in the late 90s and early 2000s, which was all alt rock, and Dave Matthews Band was huge, and I didn't get into them until a little bit later, but or like John Mayer, people were trying to have that kind of like edgier sound, but I was listening to 80s rock and roll and the music that Dad was showing me.
There are a lot of kids that grow up with music in their lives, even if their dad isn't a professional musician, but with music around them. But they don't all go on to become professional musicians. So right. Like, what did that journey look like for you?
It was huge, man. But Dad wasn't really playing professionally when I was growing up. He left Double Axel when I was so young, just to kind of be involved with what was going on in my life and my younger sister Stephanie. We're only 2 years apart, and so he wanted to be involved in our lives, and that was huge. But it was really cool to go to school. I went to Hugh C. Williams, Canton Central, and graduated in 2007, and it was just really cool to be able to be a part of the band program and have teachers that were like teaching me the legit way, reading music and all that stuff that Dad didn't know how to do. He was always a play-by-ear kind of guy. And he also graduated from Canton, too. So back in 71, I think, is when he graduated. And so it was always cool, you kind of walk in the same halls that Dad walked in the same band room where he kind of learned how to play until he decided he didn't want to do the band thing and wanted to be in rock and roll bands. But it was more so of me being interested in the things that he did when he was in high school, and knowing that he had documentation and recordings of the things that he did. So he didn't just have recordings of him playing with Double Axel. He had things of when he played with the Flying Wedge, and when he played with Fatty Lumpkin and the Spencer Davis Group. And I mean, all of these, there are so many great musicians in the North Country still, which a lot of them are just great. You can still go out and hear great live music. I have no doubt that it has changed. And and it was huge, because it got me thinking about how I wanted to play not only in school but outside of school. Like I remember, like one of my dreams was like playing a prom. I want to be able to play a prom one day, and I did it, of course, and it was kind of anticlimactic. But and it's the music business, right? And so like it was just something that I didn't really know what it was all about, but I would learn by osmosis and just listening to stories pretty much every Saturday. I mean, a big part of my music education was, I call it the Saturdays with Dad. And it was exactly that. I just wanted to listen to a record, something new I hadn't heard before, and he would pull something out and on the vinyl, put the needle down, and, oh yeah, Fleetwood Mac, they came through town back in 1971. I remember being in like the third row. Huey Lewis and the News, yeah, they came through before they were huge, everything. And you're like, wow, these bands came through St. Lawrence University in Clarkson, they performed at Appleton Arena? Like, really? Wow, that's insane. It's crazy. So it sparked my fire and the fuel to do that whole thing. And then I'd go to school and work with a great musician like Tim Savage, who was also instrumental, literally, and monumental in my growth as a musician, and saw that at an early age. And Larry Bakura, who was also a great drummer. I think like all the stars aligned, Mitch, really. It just was like I had the natural drive, and I had stories, and I had this great rock band legend with all four of them that were there to support me in whatever I wanted to do. And then I was getting a classical musical education as well. And then I learned about this place called the Crane School of Music when I was in sixth grade. Because I went to Catholic school. I went to St. Mary's. And at that time, they didn't have a music program. They would have the Crane School kids would come and teach us. And that was when I was like, you know what, this music school thing sounds pretty cool. So I knew at sixth grade that I wanted to go to the Crane School of Music and study with Jim Peterzak, who is a legend, and another legend as a professor of percussion, and not only at the school, but at a country level. I mean, he changed the game of the Percussive Arts Society, and I got to learn from him back in the mid-2000s, and it was a string of just really fortunate events that have gotten me to where I am today. It's where we grow up, it's the people that we're involved with, and just how much they instill confidence in us and encourage us. So I was always encouraged. I was never told that you shouldn't be a musician. There's no money in it, or it's not a good career path. My parents saw right away that, hey, this kid loves singing, he loves playing. I don't know what'll happen with it. I mean, but let's just help him best we can. And teachers along the way, same thing. I never heard that, there's a lot of competition. I never heard the negative side, because it's there. But I always just heard, it's a dream. So follow that dream and go after it. And it really helped when adversity came later on in life. I was like, ooh, there is some challenges here. I'm no longer this big fish in a small pond. I'm a pretty average, tuna in the ocean here. But it was huge having a dad that was a professional musician.
I'm sure there would have been a certain amount of security in sticking around the North Country for your whole career, but it must have taken, what happened to make you and your wife feel like, okay, we can do this, we can move to Nashville and now Bloomington, but become that average fish in the average tuna swimming through the ocean.
Yeah, another series of just kind of events that unfolds. So, I mean, I was teaching at the time at Herman DeKalb. I was a K-12 vocal teacher there. I was teaching, I think that was like the fifth year that I was like teaching in New York State. And it wasn't fulfilling me in terms of what I thought it would. I think like most young people, especially I think today, a lot of us are getting out of college and we're kind of getting into the workforce and then going, oh, maybe this isn't what I wanted to do. And then freaking out that, man, this isn't what I wanted to do. And then you feel bad. Oh, man, I wasted all that money going to college. But I don't feel bad. To get the education that I got was exactly what I needed. Yeah, and she was teaching at Messina, where she went to high school as well. And I just remember, I think it was during spring break, she said, well, let's head to Nashville. Because I had been a couple times. I wasn't getting the fulfillment of teaching at the public school level, and that's okay. And I had to come to grips with that. I had a great salary. Both of us were fine. I mean, the cost of living was okay, and yeah, we could have just continued to go on that path and say, yeah, this is what we do. But there was always that something in me that said, well, I think you got to try. There was a part of me that was like, yeah, I don't want these kids to see that I don't really want to be here because that's not cool, and then I don't want to get that reputation. So I tried to do the best I could to be positive and influential. And there's still some students of mine that I've seen to go on and do great things. And there's that proud teacher moment. I was like, that's why people become teachers. I get that. So once we moved to town and realized, okay, we don't have these jobs anymore. What are we gonna do? But the main thing was just that whole, if we don't do it now, you'll never know. And I don't want to look back on my life 20, 30 years from now being that guy that says, yeah, well, what if I would have tried? What if this would have happened? It opened up my eyes to this music business thing. It's not like you have to be this star. You don't have to make $1 million a year. You don't have to make, or trillions of dollars a year, whatever it ends up being. You don't have to make multi-platinum albums to be a success in the music business. And to go along with that, I was teaching at Hewelton a year before we moved as a long-term sub, and a group from Nashville actually kind of came into town and said the exact same thing to us. Said, you can make a living just being a songwriter. And then they talked about it, and I said, wow, that is very interesting. And I remember I talked with the guys after they had talked to my class, and I showed them a couple things that I'd worked on. They said, yeah, there's some really cool things. I mean, if you're ever in town, just check us out. And that's the kind of town Nashville is. It's like, hey, if you're ever in town, here's my card, give me a call. And they remember you. And it's not cutthroat like a New York or a Los Angeles or any other town that's like a big city town. I mean, Nashville is Music City, but it's also a place where people want to see you succeed. They want to help you any way that they can, and they'll give you shots. And it's kind of up for you if you can see if you can sink or swim. And when you can find out you can swim, it's pretty incredible. And then things just start snowballing. And then everyone knows everybody. It's this big town, but it's a small town too. You're rubbing shoulders with all these guys that have rubbed shoulders with the guys. And you're finding that we're all just regular guys, regular girls, regular people, just trying to make our little mark in the industry. And it's a big industry, but it's also a small industry at the same time.
Well, so let's go full circle before we wrap up. I mean, what do the guys from Double Axel think of this recording that this cover of their song from 40 years ago?
Yeah, I remember getting text messages from all of them. I think Alex, he said, wonderful rendition, little brother. Love you. And I was just really happy to hear that. And of course, Dad called me up and he was just so happy about it. And he just said, wow, of course, not surprised. You knocked it out of the park. And Frank was just like, wow, this is awesome. And Rob said to me, well, I guess I got to get working on the next one. Because Rob actually played guitar on it. So that was really cool, too. It was so great to be able to play everything, but I can't play guitar. And I was like, you know what? How cool would it be to have at least one of them play on it? And, of course, being able to do what we can do with sending files back and forth and not have to be in the same room. It's not like it was in the 80s and 90s where everyone had to be in the same room recording, playing together. And I make a lot of my living that way, too, where people will hire me to play on their records, and I'm playing for people all over the country, all over the world, and it's just, it's opened up some huge doors for me. So it's just been great to have Rob to be able to play on some things. And yeah, so they all loved it, and I was really, really humbled by that and honored to be able to share that with them, and I think that they were proud. And they were all smiling. They were all smiling, so I'm really happy about that.
Hopefully they'll wear out the cassette version.
Right? I'm going to have to make some cassettes and send them their way.
You thought of starting a band called Triple Axel?
Honestly, yeah, I did when I was in high school, but I think all the guys are like, no, that's lame. Come on. Come on. I said, well, okay. I never was good at coming up with band names. I just was never good at that. I was the guy that could rehearse the group, could write some stuff, and the arrangements. That was me. The business side of stuff and the name and that artistic side, like the cover art, that was never my shtick.
Well, listen, Kyle Tupper, it's a great story. Congratulations on this song and on a career that sounds like it's really going places, and best of luck.
Thank you so much, Mitch. I really appreciate you having me and taking the time out of your busy day.
Kyle Tupper is a Canton native, Crane School graduate, and former St. Lawrence County School music teacher who is now a professional musician, splitting his time between Nashville, Tennessee, and Bloomington, Indiana, which is where we reached him. His latest recording is a song called I Need You Now, first recorded by the North Country band Double Axel back in the days that Tupper's dad played drums with the group. We are hearing that original recording now, and you can find a link to Kyle's version, not Taylor's version, ncpr.org/northwards. Ethan Shanty's band has not covered any Double Axel tunes to my knowledge, but Ethan is still with us to take us out with the closing credits.
Northwards is an NCPR podcast production. The show is written, edited, and produced by Mitch Tyke with digital production supervision by me, Ethan Shanty. Caitlin Kelly handles our social media, Bill Hanel is our digital director, and Doyle Dean is our production manager. Music is by the Wickmore Jazz Trio of Plattsburgh. To support this show and find more podcasts, visit ncpr.org. This is NCPR, North Country Public Radio.